Hello and welcome to another Easify video. In this video, I'm going to give you an in-depth overview of the Easify Paperwork Designer, and we're going to talk about all of the buttons and switches that it contains. We'll talk about what the Paperwork Designer is and what it does, and we'll walk through a real live scenario of creating a new paperwork document from scratch, and I'll point out some of the things you'll need to bear in mind along the way. Okay, let's get started. Okay, the Easify Paperwork Designer, what is it and what does it do? Well, let's start by launching Easify Pro. So we'll launch Easify Pro and we'll log in. The Easify Paperwork Designer is a way of editing all of the paperwork that you can print in Easify. For example, invoices, quotes, delivery notes, product price labels, purchase orders, customer statements, customer envelopes, anything like that that's customer-facing paperwork. And it's a way that you can edit it and customize it or create your own. So for example, if you go into customers and we select a customer, you can see on the print menu, we can print a statement or we can print an envelope. And if we click print envelope, you just choose a default printer for now. And you can see it'll let you print an envelope. And we can go to, say, orders and quotes, and we can open up an order, or this is actually a quote in progress, and we can print a quote or an invoice or all kinds of things we can print from there. Print a quote. There we go. So there's a quote we can print, and we can customize the layout and look and feel of all of this stuff. And if we go to products, from products you can print things like price labels. Right click a product, print price label, and I'll select a default printer and we'll let that print for a moment, and it'll print to, I've actually printed to OneNote, so you can see there that we've got a barcode price labels printed. And if we go to purchases, we can open a purchase. Let me just load up a purchase. And we could print a purchase order. So if you want to work on the paperwork, you go to Tools, Paperwork Designer, and that loads the Easify Paperwork Designer, which is basically the central location for managing all of that paperwork, all of those documents. In this video tutorial, I intend to go into quite a lot of depth about the Paperwork Designer. But if you want a good reference on it, if you go to our website, www.easify.co.uk, and you go to Support, click Help, expand Easify Pro Clients, and then scroll down to Paperwork Designer, you'll see there's a whole load of information in here. We've got quite a few pages of help that go into all the details of the Paperwork Designer. So if you need to jog your memory over anything you've seen in the video, you can come here and you can see in the overview, this shows you all of the ins and outs of the Paperwork Designer. And then we've got sections about how to work with text and pictures and all kinds of stuff. So I definitely recommend heading over to our website to the help section, and I'll put links to all of this in the description below. Okay, so the Paperwork Designer. When you load it up, on the left you'll see you've got the document browser. And this lets you browse all the different documents that have been created or that are included by default with the Paperwork Designer. And this is broken into 4 categories. You have customers, orders and quotes, products, and purchases. And this covers the 4 different types of paperwork you can create. You can create paperwork that you can print from a customer window. You can create paperwork you can print from an orders and quotes window. You can print paperwork that prints related to products. And there's paperwork you can print related to purchases. Now, if you click on an item of paperwork, it'll load it up in the Paperwork Designer, which is this central part here. And this is where you can actually edit and modify and, in fact, create items of paperwork. We'll go over that in a bit more detail shortly. What I'll do, I'll just walk you around the rest of the window. On the top here, we've got some toolbars, and these contain buttons for things like adding text, you can insert boxes, or lines, you can insert pictures, and you can format all of the various things in your paperwork. Over on the right, we have an Explorer window, and this is the Field Explorer, it says at the top. And what this contains is all of the various bits of information that you can have on your paperwork. And so, for example, because we're editing an order, we're on a quote in orders and quotes, this view switches to show us all the things that are relevant to orders. So you've got fields like date invoiced, date ordered, date paid. So if you want any of those values on your paperwork, you can just drag them from here and drop them into the paperwork. And again, we'll show you that a bit later on. At the bottom, you can see we've got another tab, which is the Document Explorer. And then the Document Explorer gives you a hierarchical tree view, like an outline of your document and all of the elements it contains, elements like text boxes, pictures, and all that sort of stuff. So if I click on an item in here, you can see that this box has turned red, line comments, and this is in the details 2 section. This is the section here. And it says it's called order.product.line comments 1. This is basically just a really easy way of navigating through. Sometimes it can get quite cluttered when you're designing paperwork. So this gives you a really easy way of just actually going into a section and seeing what you've got. You may have a field in there you can't see because it's buried behind something else. So this gives you an opportunity to go and find it. And again, we'll come back to this in a bit. In the bottom right, we have a zoomer, and you can zoom in and out. So you can zoom right in. If you want to get really fine-grained control over how you line things up, you can zoom in and see them, and you can zoom out as well if you need to. Click this button here to reset the zoom. And then just here in the bottom, it tells you the page size you're currently working on. Okay, well, let's just have a little look at the document browser, and we'll talk about some of the things you can do here. Now, you can see some buttons on the top. If I select the orders and quotes section, we can click Add New, and this adds a new item of paperwork. So in here, we give the paperwork a name. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can basically recreate a delivery note. Now, it won't be a sort of a perfected delivery note. It'll just be the rough gist of how you would do it, so I can show you the mechanics of how you'd go about it. So we'll start off along those lines. So let's do new delivery notes. We'll give it a name. The document type is orders and quotes. That can be one of these 4 types of document, and that's automatically selected because we had this category selected. When we click the new button, it's already selected there. Then you choose the page size. Typically, that's going to be A4 if you're in the UK, ISO A4, and probably portrait, but you can choose a landscape layout if you prefer. And below, you can set the margins, and 10 millimeters is usually pretty good for paperwork, but if you've got a printer that has different margins, you can set those here. Now, you don't have to use standard paper sizes. You can use any size paper you want. And for example, if you're working on, say, a price label, then you're probably going to be using a label printer, and you may have a label that's, say, 50 millimeters by 25 millimeters or 75 millimeters by 25 millimeters, in which case you can go with a custom size, and you can enter in the size that you want it to be in here. So, as I say, we would look at using A4 typically. So we'll click OK. And then we get our new document. Before we go into the details of the document itself, we'll just have a quick look at some of these other buttons that we have here. I'm just going to click on Save. And it's come up and said there's no default printer. You have not selected a default printer. If you do not specify a default printer now, you'll be prompted for a printer to use when you go to print this item for the first time. Would you like to specify a default printer before saving? You probably saw in the introduction when I was going to load up paperwork, it was asking me which printer I wanted to use. So with this, you've got the option of saying, okay, I'll specify a default printer here. Just move that up a row. And if you drop down this list, it gives you a list of all the printers on the system, and you can choose which printer you want to print to. Now that obviously only applies to the computer you're actually on. So if you set this on your machine and then someone logs in on the network onto a different machine, then they'll get prompted every time they go, well, sorry, the first time they go to print the paperwork, not every time. So I'm just going to select Send to OneNote 2016. Now, that if you've got Office 365, then you should have Microsoft OneNote, which will give you a OneNote printer. And this is really useful because this allows you to basically print things from Easify, things like price labels, even thermal till receipts, you can print to OneNote, and it kind of simulates a printer. So it's a really great way of printing things just to the screen effectively. I mean, you've got the print preview, but this lets you actually really print it to a virtual device, in other words, not a real printer. And it's just great for when you're working on paperwork and you want to tweak things and print them and you don't want to get through a whole ream of paper doing it. So we'll look at that in a bit more depth later. So I'm going to select Send to OneNote and I'm going to click Save. And that's our paperwork saved. Now, if I click off that and I click back on it again, you can see the buttons have changed. So now we've got a delete button, and I could select my delivery note and I can click delete, and that would let me delete it. So you can delete paperwork that way. Obviously, make sure you really do want to delete the paperwork. The next button is rename, and if you notice, I've spelled delivery with a lowercase d. So I'm going to select new delivery notes, click on the rename button, and then this becomes editable, and I can correct my mistake. Click off it. It asks me if I want to save changes. I'll say yes, and that's now been renamed. Okay, the next button along is create copy. This is very useful, actually. If you want to work on an existing item of paperwork that's quite complex, let's say invoice. So let's say you wanted to customize the invoice, and as you can see, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of things you can see, and there's also a lot of things that you can't see. Some of these fields will have things like formulas and other settings, and you probably don't just want to come in here and start tweaking in case you break it. It's quite easy to break paperwork because it's quite complicated. So what you can do is you could select, say, the invoice, and you could click the Create Copy button, and it'll create a copy. Invoice copy 1, and then you can work on the copy, and you can do what you want on that and test it, and meanwhile everyone else can carry on using the existing invoice on the system. And if it all goes wrong, well, you can just delete the copy and then revert back to the original. Moving along, we have import document from file, and we have export selected document to file. If you get to the situation where you haven't created a copy, let's delete that. Let's just delete that copy. Okay. And let's say that you were working straight on the live document, and you changed something and you couldn't remember what you tweaked, and you want to get back to a working state. When we install Easify, or when the Easify installer runs, it actually creates a backup of all of the paperwork that comes as standard, and it saves them as what's called rep files, REP files. And if you want to restore any of these original paperwork items, you can go to the import document from file button, click on that, and then you go to, you would go to this PC, and you go to the C drive, because I'm going to C, Program Files x86, Easify, Client, Paperwork Designer, Originals, and in there, we've basically exported all of the standard paperwork as a backup, effectively, and you can import these rep files back into the Paperwork Designer. So you could select, let me have a look at something here. What I'm going to do is we'll import invoice.rep. So we'll click on that, click open. And then after a few moments, you see you get the other invoice appears. So that's a really great way of sort of getting back to a working state if you happen to have made a mistake. So we'll just delete that because we don't want that extra invoice. And you can export paperwork as well. So if you want to make a backup of paperwork, or you want to save it to disk for whatever reason, you could select, say, our new delivery notes, and you click on the Export Selected Document to File button, and you can then save that wherever you want. So that could be new delivery note, and we'll save that. And then that's saved to disk, and then you can reload that again if you need to. Okay, so back to our delivery notes. We've got it selected, and it's loaded up in the Paperwork Designer there. So we'll just expand that a little bit, and I'll zoom in a little bit as well. And in the designer, you can see that we've got various sections to the paperwork, and we've got a document header, we've got a page header, we've got details, we've got a document footer, and we've got a page footer. Now, these are all areas where you'll basically put the text and the pictures and the fields from the database, and you'll populate this with all the data you need. And you use sections, and each horizontal section here is a section. And they have different meanings, they do different things. So for example, the document header, whatever you put in here, that only appears once at the head of the document. So anything you put in here will appear at the top of page 1 of the document, and it'll appear just once on the top of the very first page. The page header is printed at the top of every page because it's a page header. Details, well, the details section is quite special because whatever you put in here will repeat for every item in the order, for example. So here we're doing paperwork to do with an order. So the details section will repeat for every item on the order. If you have 5 items on the order, you'll end up with 5 details sections, 1 for each item on the order. The document footer, well, that's printed at the bottom of the page, on the bottom of the last page, because there is just 1 per document. And the page footer is printed at the bottom of every page. Knowing that, it means you can decide where you need to put things to get them to print where you want them. So with the delivery notes, we're going to use the document header to do the heading for our delivery note. And the reason for that is that we want the, say, our company logo and the delivery number just to appear once, no matter how many pages are printed. We don't want to print our logo on every single page. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to add our company logo. So I'm going to make sure the document header is selected. You can see it turns light blue when it's selected. And I'm going to click on the Insert Picture button up here. And this will insert a picture into the currently selected section. And then I'm going to go to my Pictures folder, and I'm going to choose my company logo. And I've got this as a high resolution file. This is 3000 pixels wide, this file, so that it prints well. If you're interested in the resolutions that the pictures need to be, have a look at our other video, which is all about how to add your logo to the paperwork, and we go into it in much more depth in there. So I'm going to open that. Now, we can't see it because it's a very big image and we need to shrink it down. The reason that we have the image such high resolution is so that it prints with good quality. The Easify Paperwork Designer will actually store the image at its original size. Even though you shrink it down, it maintains the resolution, so it will print with high accuracy. Now, a little trick you can do here, I'm just going to create some more space on the screen and maximize the window. Because we've got a huge picture we need to resize, and this is way off the screen. What you can do is you can click on the page setup button, and this lets you get back to where you set up the page size, and you can change this at any time. I'm going to change the page width from 210 millimeters to 2100 millimeters. Click OK. Now I'm going to zoom out because the document's gone way off the page. And I'm just going to expand the document header down, make it really tall so that I can get at this picture and resize it. So let's just scale it down. And I'm just going to get it roughly right. Just get it in the corner there, and then I'll move the section back up. And then we'll go back to the page setup and we'll change it, just delete the 0 from the end, change it back to 210 millimeters. And then we'll click on the 1:1 button, and that will get us back to a zoom level of 1:1. And there's our image. Now you can see it's a bit distorted. If you just drag the handle on the corner, the image won't maintain its aspect ratio. It won't maintain its proportions. So to make it do that, just hold the Shift key and then drag the corner. So I'm not clicking with the mouse. Hold Shift, left click and drag, and it'll snap it to its original proportions. So let's just put our logo there. That's going to be good enough for that, and we'll move this up a little bit. Okay, the next thing we could do, and again, this isn't a real proper delivery note. This is just me showing you how you can create documents. So the next thing we'll do is we'll put the order number on there. So what we can do, it'd be nice if it printed the order number at the top. And what we can do is go down until we find the order number. Now what you do is you left click the field you want, hold it, drag it and drop it. And that's created what we call a merge field. And you can see it's a merge field because it's got curly brackets either side of the value. So it's telling us it's the order number, and the curly brackets mean it's a merge field. So let's do that. Let's put that there. And I'll move it along a bit, and we'll change the, let's have a look. Let's change the text color. We'll change that to a sort of burgundy color, and we'll make it bold. And then what we'll do is, it would be good if it said delivery number next to it. And we'll assume we use the same order number for the delivery number. So again, making sure we've got the document header selected. Well, we're going to add some text. So click on Insert Static Text, and we'll move that into position. And then, as it says, double click to edit, double click it, and then you can edit it. And click off it, and then you can move it around and resize it. Tell you what, let's change that to be delivery number, not delivery notes. Gives us a reference number. And again, we can change the color. So we change the color to that sort of burgundy color. And we'll make that bold as well. And we'll, over here, you can justify the text. So we'll align it to the right, and we'll line it up with that. Now, when you're aligning fields, something that's very useful to do, if I just zoom in a bit so we can see that a bit better. Something that's very useful to do is to be able to align things really accurately. Nothing makes your paperwork look really ropey than having things a few pixels out and not having things really neatly lined up. So it's worth taking the time to line things up nicely. And a tool that helps with that is over here, we've got the Snap to Objects button. So you can see if I move this around, it just moves anywhere. It's not constrained. So if I click the Snap button, and you can see it's now got a blue border to show it's selected. Now when I move this, you'll see little blue lines appearing, flickering around, and the blue lines are telling you what it's currently aligned to. So I need to get a blue line flickering here, and that tells me when I do that I'm aligned. I've got the delivery number aligned with the top of the order number. Okay, so let's zoom back out a little bit. And I think it's time to preview what we're doing here. So what we'll do is we'll save it. And what we'll do, this is because this is orders and quotes, this is going to print from the orders and quotes window, or rather an order detail within the order and quotes window. So what we'll do is if we see, you notice it's called new delivery note. If we go to orders and quotes and we open up an order, or a quote rather, still a quote this one, and then we go to the print menu, you can see we have delivery note, but we don't have new delivery note. So what we need to do now is we need to actually tell Easify that we want this paperwork to be available under this menu. So I'll close the order, and you always want to close the order. If you're going to edit the paperwork, you need to close the order and reopen it for it to refresh all the changes you've made to the paperwork. It'll warn you if you don't, so you don't have to remember, but it's worth doing. So over here on the menu, you can see there's a button here, and it says if you hover over it, choose which menus this report will appear under. And if you click on this, this allows you to basically say where you want this report to print from. As it's an orders and quotes type document, the only option you have is order details print menu. Well, that was the print menu we just looked at when we opened up that order. So we'll enable it to print, and then you've got a few options here. You can have it to display a separator before the menu item. So we'll say yes to that. All that means is it'll put see this underscore here? It means that on the menu, it'll actually put it in the menu with one of these in front of it, or on top of it rather. You can say display separator after. So we'll say that as well. So our new menu item will appear and it will say new delivery note, and it'll have a line above and a line below. So that just helps you sort of group things and format things and arrange them. You can say place it under a flyout menu. So you could have it so that it would appear not actually on a menu on its own, but it would be under a flyout menu, and we can look at that in a while. The sort order lets you determine which order it appears in the menu. So the higher the number, the further down the menu it will appear. You can say what the default print quantity is. So we'll just accept the default of 1. But if you wanted to always print 2 of something, you could specify that here. We'll say preview before printing. That means that when you go to print it, it'll actually pop up a print preview automatically. You could ask it to prompt for print quantity before printing. And if you tick that, it'll pop up a little box and it'll ask you how many you want to print every time you go to print it. And also there's a script button here, prompt before printing. And if you click on this, you can actually enter code that will give you a prompt. So if you wanted to have paperwork that popped up a prompt to the user, then you could use this to do that. And we'll cover formulas in another video. That's a big subject, so we won't cover that in this video. So we'll accept these settings, we'll click OK. We'll go back to the order, we'll open it up, and we go print. And you can see now we've got new delivery note. Now, as it is, it's put 2 separators in because I told it to put a separator above and below, and there was already one above estimate. So let's go into new delivery note again. So we'll close this. We'll go into the menu and we'll get rid of the separator after, untick that because we don't want 2 separators. Click OK, and then we'll pop open the quote again. And now you can see we've got new delivery note and it's sitting between 2 separators. Okay, so let's click that. And there's our new paperwork. And you can see we've got our company logo and we've got a delivery number, which is the order number 10020, 10020. Okay, so far so good. Now, something else you need to be aware of when you're creating new paperwork is the security. So if you click on this little set of keys, you see there's a security window pops up. And here you can basically say who actually has permissions on Easify to print that document. So if you only want, say, the administrator to be able to print a document, you could remove other people, or you could grant access to Jane, and so on. So that's something you need to do. If you find that at any point you're told you don't have permission to print a document, then you can come into the Paperwork Designer, open it up, and check the permissions here. Okay. So then the next thing we want to do is let's put the customer name on there. So we want the customer's name to appear below this. So let's go over to the order. And if you see here, we have customer. So we expand customer. And what we want is there's all kinds of fields here that you can use. So you've got address 1, address 2, address 3, company, country, county, all kinds of things. You can sift through here to see the values that you're interested in. But what we're going to do is we're going to choose a special field called formatted delivery name and address. And this is quite a useful field. I'm just going to left click it and drag it over here and expand it out a little bit. This is useful because if you imagine you want to put the customer's name and address, if you try and do first name, and then you do surname, and then you do address 1, and address 2, and address 3, and then you do, you sort of see where this is heading, and then you do town, and you do county, postcode. You got to line all of these up, and then they may not have an address 3, so you end up with a space where that should have been, and it can get really, really messy. So we'll just go and delete these. What we've got instead is we've got a sort of a canned version of this where we've already done all the sort of formatting and all the working out of how to format a name and an address, and you can put it on there with a single field, and when this prints, it'll basically go and get the customer's first name, surname, company, address 1, 2, 3, town, county, postcode, all that kind of stuff, and it'll put it into this single box. So what we'll do is let's put that box, say, there, and we'll move this up, this section up, and we'll put a box above that to say deliver to. So let's put another text box, and I'll double click to edit, and we'll say deliver to. I'll make that bold, and I'll just shrink that up a little bit, tidy it up a wee bit, and then we'll move that over here. And you can see we've still got the snap to objects magnet switched on, so it's making sure all the formatting is all nicely lined up for us. And we'll save that. And let's go and see what that looks like. So we'll open up the quotes and we'll print new delivery notes. And you can see there's nothing showing there. Now let's just go and check the customer record. Let's go and click on here. And this one actually doesn't have a delivery address. So what we'll do for this one, let's say copy from customer details, and we'll say OK. And yes, we want to save changes to the customer. We'll apply our changes. Let's try that again. New delivery note. Okay, now you can see we've got the customer there. Bespoke Carpenters, Patrick Grimes. But, well, we were promised an address and all this great formatting and all this time-saving stuff. Well, it's done that, but what's happened is this box is only one line high. So it's printed the first line and all the other lines are just missing. Well, they're not missing, they're just not visible because this is only one line high. So there's a way around that. If we close this and we close the order again, what you need to do is on this box, we want this to automatically expand if it goes over a single line. So there's a button that does that for us. Oops, we'll just put that back there. With it selected, you see this button here. It says allow text box to grow vertically to fit its contents. You click that, you see it ends up with a blue surround. And we click save. And what that tells this box to do is if there's more text than will fit in, this box is allowed to grow. It's allowed to vertically grow and get bigger. And what it'll actually do is it'll push the section below down. So I can show you that. If we just put a text box in here and we call this, say, the page header, and we'll save that, then you should be able to see that when we print this, that the formatted delivery name and address will push this further down the page. So we'll open that up and we'll go print new delivery notes. And indeed, the page header has been pushed down and it's printed the full delivery information. Okay, right. So let's close that and we go back to our Paperwork Designer. Now, remember we said that the different types of sections do different things. The document header will print once for the entire document, no matter how many pages the document is. It'll only print at the top of the first page. A page header would print at the top of every page. Now, it could be nice on here if we had a date on here. So let's just put a date. I'll delete that box. And if we put a date, we don't really want it to, we could put the date over here next to all of this stuff, but I want the date below it just because I do. And if I put it in here in the page header, that date would print on every page. So we probably don't want that. So what you can do is you can right click and choose section editor. And this pops up the section editor. And this allows you to edit which sections you have, add new sections, delete them, and so on. You can also click this button here on the menu. This is another way of getting to the same thing. So what we'll do is we've got some document header, and we'll click add, and then we'll add it. That adds a second document header. Then the page header, we don't want that. We'll just make that invisible. So we'll say that's not a visible section, the page header. Okay, so now we've got another document header, and you can have as many headers as you want. You can have as many document headers as you want, as many details, as many document footers, as many page footers. And what we'll do is let's put a date in here. So we'll start with a text box just to say date. And it doesn't really matter what the date is. So we're not really going for accuracy with this. This is really just a sort of, as I say, to show you how you go about building up paperwork and some of the things you can do. So we'll make that bold. And we'll shrink that down a little bit, and then we'll see what sort of dates we've got here. So we've got, let's have a look. So what we'll do, we'll go and we'll do a, on every bit of paperwork, there's a general section. And here there are some just general fields that apply to all things. And one of them is print date. So we'll just use the print date for this for now, just for simplicity. So we'll do that. And one of the reasons here why you might use two document headers is that it may be that you want something to print here and something to print here, but you want, say, this field to be able to grow. And what you don't want is for this formatted delivery name and address to grow and just grow over the top of the date. So by doing it this way, it means that you can have two headers on the document, header 1 and then header 2. This one prints directly below this one, but this one is basically spaced down if this one expands, so it stops one line overwriting another. So again, let's save that and have a look, see what we've got, and go print new delivery notes, and there we've got a date. Now you notice on the date it's printed out as 2019-06-20 2057-02. So it's probably not the most clear way of reading a date. We can change that as well. So let's close that and click our date. And then you'll notice that here we have a field format. Now you can either type in a field format, which is an advanced thing. And again, we'll probably cover that in a later video because it's quite a lot, it's quite involved. But what you can do, if you go to this button, you can pick a field format. And if you click that, it'll pop up some predefined format strings you can use. And this varies depending on the type of thing you've selected. So if you select a date, this gives you date formats. If you added a currency, it would give you currency formatting options. So on the left, it tells you the format string you need to use. Don't worry about that. Just basically look down the list on the right and pick the one you like the look of. So 15 August 2010, that looks pretty good. So we'll select that. And you can see it's put curly bracket 0 colon capital D close curly bracket. I'll say I'll do another video where we go right into the details of that because it's a very powerful feature. But just accept that for now. We'll save that and we'll open up our order and we'll print new delivery notes. And now we have 20 June 2019. Now even I can understand that. That's great. Okay, whoops. Let me just go back to that. The print preview. Window, there we go, right. Okay, so it's shaping up okay, it's not bad at all. Let's close that, let's close the order again. Okay, so now we can put in some details. Now, the details on the delivery notes are going to be the details of the products on the order. So over in the Field Explorer, you can see we've got a product section. So we have an order and it contains products one or more products, and it contains a customer as well as these fields here related to the actual order itself. So if we expand product, you can see these are all the various fields related to the product. And as I said, anything you put in the details section will repeat once for every product on the order. And I'll show you that. So if we basically drag some things over for the product, so let's have stock code, Easify SKU, that's what I was looking for, Easify SKU, stock code. So we'll drag that over and we'll have a description. So we want the stock code, the description of the product, and we want the quantity, put the quantity there as well. And we'll save that, and then we'll print it. We won't worry about formatting it yet. Let's go and see what it looks like. So we go print new delivery note, and there we go. We've got a delivery note, and it's got all of our products. Now the line spacing is too big. Obviously, we've got the section too large. The text boxes are the wrong sort of sizes. So let's go and change the formatting a bit, see if we can improve that somewhat. So the stock code, that's, let's move it near the top. And stock code isn't going to be very long. So we can shrink that up. Even though the description's wrapped there, it won't be on the real thing. So we'll put the description next to it and we'll make that a lot longer. And the quantity, let's make that center justified. So the quantity number's in the middle. We can shrink that down a bit because we're not really having huge quantities, and we'll move that to the end. And then we can let the description take up the full width there. And we'll just move this up here like that. Make the details section narrower. And again, we'll go and have another look at what we're doing. So we'll go print new delivery note. And that's not bad. That's probably okay. We can probably live with that. And maybe there's a little bit much space still. So we can, if we do that, if we zoom in, that'll be easier to work with. So let's zoom in, and we can move this even closer to the top. And you can see we've got the snap to objects on. We could turn that off and move this more precisely, but if you hold the Alt key on the keyboard, that temporarily switches it off. So we can just nudge this a bit closer to the top without the snap feature. And then we can let go of the Alt key, and then we can snap the description to line up with the top of this. We can snap that to line up with the side there. And then we scroll along, we can move the quantity up so it snaps to the top there. We can shrink the height of these boxes a little bit as well. They don't need to be so big. And then we can shrink that up a bit more, make it all a little bit tighter. We'll save it, and then we'll have another look and see where we are. Okay, print new delivery note. And there we are. That's looking a bit neater now. So you can sort of see the workflow I'm using here. Basically hopping into the Paperwork Designer, making some changes, looking at it, seeing what I don't like, going back, and you just sort of loop around, iterate around, just sort of tweaking and previewing, and go from there. Now, something that would be quite good to do would be to have it so that we've got some sort of description as to what these values mean. So what we can do now is we could actually re-add our page header in, and we could have a column names above these. So we go to our section editor, and we've got page header. Let's make that section visible. So this will print at the top of every page. And then what we can do is we can make some column headings. So make sure that's selected. And we'll add a static text field, and we'll call that SKU. And we'll shrink that up a wee bit. Oops, shrink that there, move that in a bit, and we'll make that bold. And we'll move it up to the top so that it's above the Easify SKU there. And then we'll add one in for the description. So again, page header selected, add some static text, and then we'll say description. And again, we'll make that, we'll shrink that up a little bit, and we'll make that bold. And make sure that lines up there. And then we'll have quantity. So we'll add another box, and we'll double click that and call that QTY for quantity. And I'll make that center aligned. and I'll shrink it down a little bit. And then we can put that over the quantity box like that. Oops, we'll make that bold as well. And we'll just drag that up. Actually, yeah, tell you what, I was going to drag that up and make it smaller. What I'll do is we'll put a line in. Let's have a line there. So if we, with this page header selected, click Insert Box, and that puts a box in the section. And to make it a line, what we can do is we can go over here to borders, and we'll say left border style none, top border style none, and right border style none. And that leaves us basically with a line. This is just an easy way of creating a line. Now, changing the line style on a border, there are various styles you could use. You could have none, as we've used. You could have a solid line, dot, dash. There's various styles of lines you can have. You can set the thickness. So let's do that on the, yeah, let's change the thickness. Let's change the thickness to say, what's 2.25 points like? Oh, that's gone thick, and that's given us the, yeah, what I did there was I changed it globally, which has put all the borders back. So if you change things here, the border style here changes all the borders. The border thickness here changes it for all the borders, and as does the color. Whereas below, you can change them individually. So that's what I should have done. We know that for next time. So left border style, none. And then we'll go and do it again. Top border style, none. Right border style, none. And then we can just adjust the bottom border. So there we go. So the thickness of that is whatever we just set it to. So let's take that down to 1.5. There we go. That's all right. And I'll change the color as well. So on the bottom border, I'll set the color, and we'll set that to that sort of, use that maroon color that we chose before. And then with that, we want to switch off snapping for this one. And we'll move that to there, and we'll put that under here. Now that we put the box on there, it's laying over the top of the text, which isn't good. So to fix that, just right click it and then say send to back. And you can do this on any of the elements in your paperwork. You can basically choose whether they're in front of or behind of other controls. So say with the image as well, you can right click that, bring to front, send to back. While we're in here, actually, front and center, that's quite a handy thing. All of these different options here, you can actually get at in the Document Explorer. So, for example, you could select picture 1, and you can right-click and you can bring to the front, center back, and front and center. Front and center is quite useful. If you have, let's say, we're working on this section and we have a text box, and it has the text, I'm lost. And we're working on it, and then we move this up here, and we can't find it. We don't know where that's gone. So you can actually come over to the Document Explorer, and you can click around, and this will show you where things are. So you can see that text 1 is here because it comes up with a red line, and text 2 is over here, and text 7 doesn't seem to appear. So if you right click and say front and center, it'll basically bring it to the top and put it in the middle, and you can find your lost control. And in this case, delete it again, which seems a bit sad, but there we go. Okay, right, let's save our changes and see how it looks with our new header and our underline there. So we go print new delivery note. And there we go. That's starting to shape up quite nicely. I think we're kind of getting there now. So, okay, so what should we do next? Let's put a page count at the bottom to tell people how many pages they can expect in this delivery note. So what we'll do for that is we'll use the page footer, because we want the page count at the bottom of every page. So what we'll do is we'll add static text, and we'll say page. And we'll do page of page, if you see what I mean. We'll do page, and then we'll do of. All will become clear. I'll make that centered. And then if we go to our Field Explorer and we go to the general settings at the bottom, we've got page number. So we'll put page number there, and we can make that quite, we'll make that quite narrow. And I'll zoom in as well so I can actually see more easily what I'm doing here. So we have the page number and we have the page text. I'm going to turn the snapping back on so I can line these up nicely. And then we have page, whatever the page number is of, and then the page count. So we'll put that on there. Page count. And again, you could, if you're doing this for real, you could take loads of time and get this looking really perfect. So I'm not going to worry too much for the demo. And then we'll zoom out a little bit. And you could add whatever you want. So let's just put another little box on there and we'll say, thank you for your custom. You could put your business name and address and any logos or anything you want down here. You can put whatever you like, but we'll just do that for now. Okay, let's save that and have a look at what we've got. So back to here and print new delivery notes. And let's expand that. And there we go. We've got thank you for your custom, page 1 of 1. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to do here is we'll add in the ability for someone to sign for it. So let's say we want a signature on this thing. So what we'll do for that is we'll use the document footer. Remember that if it's a documents section, it appears once per document. So we don't want people to sign every page. We just want them to sign the very last page. So let's say we'll put in some static text and we can say signed by, signed by. And we'll make that a little bit bigger. Move that in a little bit. And then again, we'll just put a box in there. So we'll create a signature strip. So we'll put in the box and we use a similar formatting to before. So let's say border style none, and then just go down and say bottom border style solid. There we go. That saves having to remove all those other borders. And we'll go bottom border thickness 1.5, and we'll go bottom border color. And again, we'll use our maroon theme that we've got going, and we'll just move that to here. And there's a signature strip. And maybe we'll put another border in as well, just to delineate this a little bit. Let's just tidy that up. So let's put another box in, and we'll put a box there. And again, we'll get rid of the all the borders, but we'll replace the top border this time. So top border style solid, and the top border thickness will be 1.5, and the top border color will be a maroon color. And then we can move this along, and we can resize that a little bit, move it along there, get it lined up. Looks a bit thicker than the others. Let's just zoom in a bit and have a look. See whether it's just my eyes. No, it does look a bit thicker than the others. So let's just check that. So top border thickness 1.5. What about this one? What size was that? So top border, bottom border thickness 1.5. Okay, no, it must be the same. Okay, it's just my eyes. Okay, let's save that and go back to our order and print new delivery notes. And let's have a look at what we've got. Okay, one last tweak. I think we'll move that box down a little bit. We're just sort of fine tuning here, really. As I say, this is just a sample, so it doesn't really matter. But let's do a half decent job while we're at it. Okay, save that. Back to the order. Print new delivery notes. What have we got? Let's expand that out. And there we go. That's something we can work on. Now, I said before about printing to OneNote. Now, we can use the print preview to preview all of our changes here. But if you did want to actually do more of a print preview, you could click on print, select send to OneNote 2016, select print again, And OneNote opens up, and there you can see it's actually been printed to OneNote. You can use this as well if you want to email something. You could get things to print to OneNote, and then you can copy and paste them and email them. Just a handy little trick to know. Okay, so that pretty much covers how to use the Paperwork Designer, certainly a detailed overview anyway. Let's just hop back to the actual Paperwork Designer, and we'll just go over a few of the things that we haven't covered and things that we'll save for a future video because they're a bit more advanced. In fact, there's a few things I can show you that aren't more advanced. Let's just create a box here. There's a few other things you can do with boxes. You can set background colors, so we can set the background color of a box like that. And also you can do corner radius. So if you do a corner radius, you can say, okay, I want a 5mm radius, and you can create a nice rounded edged box like that. Some of the other buttons on the toolbar, you notice that we've got a button here that says this document is an invoice. This is a special button. If you were creating a document that is an invoice, then you'd need to click this, make sure this is selected, and that tells the system that the document's an invoice, and it will treat it differently when it prints it. Basically, if the document's an invoice, then when you print an invoice, Easify will know that you've printed an invoice, and it can record that in your financial information, and that can be helpful with VAT returns and things like that. But again, we'll cover that in more detail in a future video. What else do we have? If we select a value, we mentioned briefly the field format. This particular value is a number, so if we click the field format on that, if you remember we did that on the date, we did the field format. So if we do it on a number, then we've got different number formats that we can choose from, and you can pick one that suits what you need. There's also a couple of other buttons here. Oh, sorry, over here. You have a formula to determine whether the field is shown or hidden, and you have formula to determine the value displayed in the field. Now, these are very powerful, and again, I'm not going to go into any great detail in this video because it's beyond the scope of this one. But if you click on the formula to determine whether a field is shown or hidden, you can come in here and you can actually type in JavaScript. So you can type JavaScript code, and you can write little formulas that will evaluate things, and whether if they return true or false determines whether that field is visible or not. So that's very powerful. That's used in our built-in invoice paperwork. So you could say date paid, drag the date paid over, and you could say if order.date paid is less than, say, date ordered, return true. Now that won't run and that won't work, but that gives you an idea of the kind of thing you can do. So very powerful. So I say that will be the subject of another video. The hide formula you can use, and the other one is a value formula, and this one's very powerful as well, because here with the value formula, it's another formula you can set on a field. And with this, what you could do is you could say that you could say return, for example, you could say return. Let's have a look. Total paid times 12 for whatever reason. So this field would actually display the order total paid times 12. Very powerful, because what it lets you do is to introduce extra functionality that isn't built in. So, you know, if you want to be able to display things that aren't already here, but maybe you want to calculate things and display them, then you can do that. And finally, the only thing I think we haven't mentioned is this little button here. Use code 39 barcode delimiters. I'll just show you what that means actually. If we, let's just save our changes there. And if we look at the price label, you can see that we've got this is a barcode label that we can print. You can print this from the products menu. And if I click on one of these values, this doesn't get selected. And as I say, you can see things are selected because they have a blue border. And if I click things, they don't have a blue border. But if I click the barcode, you notice that that's clicked in. And again, it says use code 39 barcode delimiters. If you want to display something as a barcode, then what you would do is, for example, let me just create some space and I'll just show you the idea. So on the products, let's say we want the Easify SKU to be a barcode. We would drag that over, and it's already got it as a barcode font. You need to make sure that the font is 3 of 9 barcode. If it's just set as text, it won't work. So you need to set it as 3 of 9 barcode, so it uses the barcode font to print it. It's very easy with a barcode to make the text box too narrow and you can't really see. It's not like a Word where you can see you've missed the end off, so make sure you've got plenty of space for the barcode. And you need to do this when you actually print it as well, because the actual value, if I go to, I put that back to text, you can see that, let's make that a small font size. You can see it actually says Easify SKU bracket stock code. If I convert that to a barcode, then, you know, it wraps over. In reality, what will actually end up in there is it'll just be a 6-digit number, for example. So it'll be a lot shorter. But just bear that in mind. Bear in mind you need to make sure that the field is wide enough. So you would have that as a barcode, say 18-point font, 3 of 9 barcode. But for it to actually scan, you need to have this clicked. Because if you don't have this clicked on a barcode field and you print it, it'll look like a barcode, but your barcode scanner just won't print it. And the very simple reason is that for barcode to scan, it needs to have an asterisk at the beginning and the end. Clicking this makes sure that when this is printed, it inserts that asterisk for you. For example, if you had a, let me just go to here. So if you had a stock code of say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that would be the stock code. When you print it as a barcode, you actually have to print it like this with an asterisk either end. So say when you select a barcode field, set the barcode font on it, and then make sure that this button's clicked. So if you ever have the problem where barcodes won't scan, come and check that. That's probably why. Okay, so that pretty much wraps things up for our detailed overview of the Easify Paperwork Designer. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments below or email us support@easify.co.uk and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible with an answer. In the meantime, I hope you found this video useful, and until next time, thanks for watching.